Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly massive policy pivot coming out of South Africa. We're talking about the June 2026 cabinet decision to completely overhaul their national migration strategy. Now, if you follow regional economic shifts, you know that border management, it's absolute make or break. So let's dive right in and break down exactly what this framework entails, why it's happening right now, and the huge signals it's sending to global markets.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the push for policy change, then break down the unified national strategy. After that, we'll look at who actually feels the impact, analyze the economic and diplomatic signals, and finally, look at the ultimate test, execution.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty policy details, I want you to consider this core question. How does a nation balance border security with regional economic integration? This really sets the philosophical stage for everything we're about to discuss. You see, South Africa is attempting to maintain social stability while simultaneously juggling an incredibly complex web of laws, constitutional obligations, and absolutely crucial cross-border trade. So, Section 1, the push for policy change. Why act now? Let's take a look at the immediate friction points that force the government to elevate migration to a cabinet-level priority. Basically, government authorities have been facing four specific escalating pressures. We're talking about heightened public debate around illegal immigration, escalating labor market pressures, very real strains on social service delivery, and growing border security concerns. Now, these aren't just isolated incidents, right? They represent a convergence of economic conditions and regional mobility that really lit a fire under the government to seek a major structural change. And this is a rapidly developing policy shift. To put the timeline into perspective, on June 3, 2026, the cabinet officially held a meeting to approve the comprehensive framework. Then, literally just 6 days later, on June 9th, the details hit the public sphere. And coming up, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the nation to formally outline this new framework. So it's a really fast-moving sequence culminating in a highly anticipated executive address. Moving right along to Section 2, a unified national strategy. Let's look at the actual structural solution the government engineered to address those heavy pressures we just outlined. What's super fascinating here is the explicit move away from treating immigration as just a standalone home affairs issue. The newly approved National Action Plan Country Report on Migration was developed by an entirely separate body called the Interministerial Committee on Migration. By bumping this up to an interministerial level, well, migration is now officially being positioned as a central national governance priority. It's a real game changer. And this comparison perfectly illustrates that strategic pivot. The old approach, it relied on fragmented interventions. Different, isolated government departments applying short-term patches to long-term problems. It was a bit like a giant puzzle with missing pieces. But the new approach is a coordinated national response governed by direct executive oversight. It is a massive institutional shift from reactive management to a structured, long-term national framework. All right, Section 3, who feels the impact? Let's break down who actually cares about this new structural framework and who feels the real-world ripple effects. Because listen, this isn't just about border guards. The ripple effect hits government departments across policing, labor, and social development. It absolutely hits businesses that rely heavily on cross-border labor and regional integration to function. It impacts legal foreign nationals residing in South Africa, and of course, investors who are always keeping a close eye out for political stability and policy certainty. And fundamentally, it hits local communities, who are directly affected by the service delivery and employment concerns we touched on earlier. Now for Section 4, economic and diplomatic signals. We know the policy and we know the stakeholders. So let's zoom out and explore how this builds into massive macroeconomic and diplomatic shifts. The cabinet is basically sending two distinct sets of signals here. First, look at the market signals. Investors absolutely crave policy certainty, and by elevating this strategy to the cabinet level, South Africa is promising reduced operational uncertainty and strong institutional coordination. Second, check out the diplomatic signals. This proves a real commitment to continental cooperation, smoothing the path for regional economic integration and aiming for high-level regional stability. It's a dual-pronged approach. To add some really crucial context to this, just look at the recent dynamic between South Africa's President Ramaphosa and Kenya's President Ruto. They've actually taken recent migration-related tensions and flipped them into a pan-African diplomatic push. They're sending envoys across Africa to explicitly link regional stability with economic integration. This proves that South Africa's internal border framework is deeply intertwined with a much larger, continent-wide strategy for cooperation.
Which brings us to Section 5, the ultimate test, execution. We've seen the impressive strategy on paper and the strong signals, but what is the ultimate vulnerability of literally any bureaucracy? Execution.
It really all comes down to these 3 phases. Step 1, securing executive and cabinet approval. Well, that's complete. Step 2, outlining the approach via a presidential address, is imminent. But business leaders, investors, and regional partners, they are strictly watching Step 3. Can the government actually deliver measurable enforcement, governance efficiency, and real policy coordination on the ground? Because at the end of the day, the approval is just a piece of paper until it strengthens institutional capacity in the real world. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, critical thought to ponder. Will executive approval actually translate into measurable, on-the-ground enforcement? South Africa has taken a massive, structured step toward addressing a highly complex geopolitical and domestic challenge. They've signaled their intent to the markets and to their continental neighbors loud and clear. But true success depends entirely on the reality of implementation in the months and years to come. So, what do you think? Thank you so much for joining me, and definitely keep an eye on how these strategies unfold.